Antony Blinken hails UK Brexit reset as he and Lammy unite to condemn Iran. I'm going to read into this more from The Independent, you guys. Let's go. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. This is Reganelite here with an article from The Independent with the headline that Antony Blinken hails the UK's Brexit reset as he and David Lammy unite to condemn Iran. The US Secretary of State Antony Blinken and the Foreign Secretary David Lammy put aside the differences over arms sales, arms to Israel, and said a Middle East peace deal is 99% there. Guys, while you're here, make sure you hit the like button and share this across social media so that others are notified of this video. No, I don't buy this Middle East peace deal as being 99% there. No, I don't. I don't buy that for 1 second. I'm pleased that obviously that Antony Blinken and David Lammy are obviously re-establishing renewed relationship, how we say. Although the title does say UK Brexit, I want to stress this is not about Brexit. What basically Antony is saying basically saying it's great that the UK and the EU are looking to reset their relationships. That's all it is. It's not a U-turn on Brexit or anything, but they just put the word Brexit on the title, which I will say is a bit misleading. I think, yeah, we can all agree with that term. There is absolutely no question that there is a little bit of tension between the UK and US over what's happening with the fact that the UK I've suspended 30 arms licenses to Israel. Although personally, I think they should suspend all arms licenses to Israel because of what's happening within the Gaza Strip. I've talked about this on several occasions, but if you need reminding, more than 40,000 Palestinians have died as a result of since October the 7th as for what's been happening inside Gaza. Obviously, there have been a number of IDF soldiers who have lost their lives with the goal of obviously trying to get the hostages out and away from Hamas. Obviously, what's happening there is horrible and tragic and needs to be dealt with as soon as possible. Without a doubt that there are many civil wars and conflicts taking place across other parts of the Middle East as well. Without a doubt, there's civil wars in Syria. There's obviously the Yemen. There's a civil war there with the Houthi rebels, and there's Iraq with its own problems as well. Lebanon is not exactly stable either, considering the tension between them and the Hezbollah, and Israel obviously there as well. So Middle East is I would say is on. I wouldn't go as far to say it's on fire, but I would say very close for an explosion. They do not have many friends, Israel, in the Middle East. Let's put it that way. And I do hope that they can push. I do hope that the US does push as soon as possible for a ceasefire there in Gaza. But I wouldn't say a peace deal is 99% there. I don't buy that all for a second, guys. But I do hope that with a new Labour government, that there will be renewed. The relationship between us and the US will be reset in a way as well, because people need to understand that the Conservatives really did upset a lot of our friends and allies with their rhetoric and with their tone, their language that they have used, and the way they've gone about. Obviously, have not been in any way in the benefit of the UK. Or benefit of our reputation amongst the world. And while, of course, I am very sceptical about Labour, and rightfully so, and as you should be as well, we also have to give the benefit of doubt and give them time to see what they can do. If you have no patience, I suggest you try and get some, because we all, if we seriously want some changes in the UK, we have to give them time to do that as well. So let's read a bit what they've had to say guys. So the US Secretary of State Antony Blinken gave the strongest indication yet that the UK government's attempts to heal the relationship with the EU in the wake of Brexit have significantly improved relations between Washington and London. With Sir Keir Starmer set to fly to Washington this week to meet with US President Joe Biden, there have been concerns that so-called special relationship may have been called by David Lammy's announcement that he was suspending 30 arms export licenses to Israel. However, the two men insisted that they are working hand in hand and united to condemn Iran after it was revealed that the country had been sending ballistic missiles to Russia for use in Ukraine. We also know that Iran, I believe it's Iran, that have been sending drones to Ukraine as well. So we do know that that has been happening as well. So it's not just ballistic missiles. That is as well. Now, obviously, what happens? It's going to be a very important meeting between Sir Keir Starmer and Joe Biden. I think that's going to be really, really important, and it'll be interesting to see what Joe Biden says to Keir Starmer and vice versa, and what we do here out of that special so-called special relationship meeting between the two. Now that Keir Starmer is actually Prime Minister and actually going to have a proper meeting as well, it will be interesting to see how that goes. Sources have suggested that Tehran is receiving nuclear technology in exchange. Mr. Blinken said the US would be imposing further sanctions on Iran. It's understood that the UK will follow suit. So obviously more sanctions go try on Iran to try to suppress them. I don't think it's going to make too much of a difference. The thing is, it's like, how do you stop them getting to Russia? That's the thing. Secretary Blinken and the Foreign Secretary also insist that a ceasefire deal between Israel and Hamas is 99% there. Don't believe that whatsoever for a second. I've literally checked media outlets and whatnot. No one is saying this. I'm not seeing anyone saying this. Now, it's entirely possible that by the time you see this video, it's possible that a deal may have been reached. But I'm not buying this 99% at all, guys. The two also announced a joint trip to Ukraine as a symbol of support for the country after strains between the previous Tory government and the Biden administration over Brexit. As Blinken made it clear that the attempts by Sir Keir to repair relations with the EU are strongly supported in the White House and the US Department of State. He said the Prime Minister and David have made it a top priority to reset relations with Europe, including seeking closer cooperation through a wide-ranging UK-EU security pact. We fully support these efforts. It's good for the UK, it's good for Europe, it's good for the US, which benefits our transatlantic allies, are tied even more closely together. The Secretary of State said the relationship between the two allies goes beyond special. It's been described in the past, adding, I would like to call it essential to our nations, our people, and people well beyond these shores. Yeah. Like I've said, the relationship has been tarnished by the Conservatives. They have tarnished everyone and everything over their non-stop complaining and crying about immigration. They literally want to tear everything down. He noted that President Biden is particularly pleased with the new UK government's commitment to the Northern Ireland peace process, an issue that has proved problematic in his relationship with former Prime Minister Boris Johnson, Liz Truss and Rishi Sunak. Yeah, that's obviously the Northern Ireland peace process. The Good Friday Agreement must be protected. Obviously, the US are a guarantor in that as well. That's not going anywhere. We know that pretty much the government has no issue in changing that. Luckily, the Conservatives were not stupid enough to want to try and change things too much there, but they weren't helping themselves either. Mr. Lammy held a trip to Ukraine as the first of its kind in the decade. A press conference in London alongside his American counterpart on Tuesday. Speaking to the media in the electoral suit at the Foreign Office, Mr. Lammy said that the visit would be crucial in allowing both men to listen to Ukrainian concerns and report back to their leaders. It's hugely important that we're travelling together to hear from Ukrainian counterparts and President Zelensky and their assessments on the situation on the ground and their needs on the ground, Mr. Lammy told journalists. Announcing sanctions on Iran, Mr. Blinken said the United States will be announcing further sanctions on Iran later today, so there'll probably be more by the time you hear this, including additional measures on the Iran air. We expect allies and partners will be announcing their own measures on Iran as well. The US has warned Iran that sending weaponry to Russia to use against Ukraine would constitute a dramatic de-escalation. Russia has now received shipment from all these ballistic missiles and will likely use them within weeks in Ukraine against Ukrainians. He said the Iranian ballistic missile system has a maximum range of 75 miles, allowing Russia to target its arsenal further from the front line, he added. As with the US intelligence findings, Iran has denied providing Russia with weapons for its use of war in Ukraine. We know that there has been much communication been going on between Iran and the US. Now, I also want to stress this point here that even though like most sources do say that there have been ballistic missiles, we do know that a lot of the drones that Russia have been using against Ukraine have been Iranian made. There have been numerous cases of stories and sources from that as well. So that's the thing. However, as far as ballistic missiles, I've not heard too much about transfer of ballistic missiles from Iran to Ukraine. I haven't heard as much as I have about drones. So it's entirely possible that Iran could be telling the truth. entirely possible. But if you know, I always used to say, so I take a tiny bit of pinch of salt with it. I'm not saying the US are lying, but I'm also not saying that Iran are lying completely either on that. Mr. Lammy would not be drawn on whether Ukraine would be given permission to use UK supply Storm Shadow missiles on Russian soil, something that Mr. Zelensky has sought for a long time. Yeah, so this is obviously a big issue here. Now, one of the things that Ukraine in its conflict is really trying to do here, guys, what they're really trying hard to do is they really want to start as much damage as they can on Russian soil in order to try and stop the advances that Russia are making within the conflict, within the war in Ukraine. For those who aren't been aware, obviously Russia's intention, Vladimir Putin, one of the goals that he wants to make by the end of this year is to secure the Donetsk region by the end of this year. That was one of the goals that he was setting out. And there is still a couple of months between now and the end of the year. It's entirely possible that is still an objective that he still can achieve, because every single day passes, as far as I'm aware, according to Deep State Map, according to the Kiev Independent and other sources, Russia are still continuing their advancements in Donetsk in particular. There's not been too much advances in any other positions, other regions of Ukraine. Obviously, there's been skirmishes and missiles firing back and forth, mainly from Russia into Ukraine territories as well. But not really other much movements there. They seem to hold the ground in all those places. But I go all the way back to as far as when Avika fell earlier this year. And ever since then, Russia have just pushed, and Ukraine have just not had a way to really slow the Russia down at all. And it has been a slog, for them. It would be quite wrong to comment on the details of operational issues in such forums such as this, because the only person who could benefit is Russian President Vladimir Putin, and we will do nothing to give him any advantage in his illegal invasion, Mr. Lammy has said. So obviously a bit more. So this story is obviously a bit more away from mainly UK and more about Middle East, about the war in Ukraine in particular, and obviously our relationship with our relationship, of course, with the US, and obviously and what's happening with the Middle East, and obviously what's happening with in particular the war in Ukraine, and it's some interesting thoughts, I would say, there. You know, Antony Blinken has been visiting the Middle East God knows how many times. I don't buy whatsoever that there'll be a peace deal anytime soon. I just keep hearing it over and over again. Netanyahu does not want a peace deal. If he wanted a peace deal, he would have got one already. He would have really got one. We know that if he gets a peace deal, he will simply he will be forced out of his job. He's not prepared to do that. As for what's happening with the war in Ukraine, you know, at the moment they have Ukraine, for those who don't know, have an incursion in some of Russia's territory, and they look as far as I'm aware, they're still expanding. As far as I'm aware, from the last reports that I've checked, but they're not expanding too much, I think, because they don't want to overstretch themselves, you know. But they've given up quite a lot of their strong, experienced forces to make the incursion into Russian territory. The intention is not to take the territory from Russia. The intention is to drive and pull Russian forces away from Donetsk and other regions where they're losing territory, to divert their attention away from those lines. But it's not really proving effective anyway at the moment. But that's the situation, obviously, with regards to that. But I still report short videos nearly on a near daily basis, guys, of Russia hitting targets and whatnot, schools, and you know, lots of civilians lives have been lost as a result of some of the actions that Russia have caused on the Ukrainian citizens, unfortunately. We don't get much reporting on how much the Ukrainian military does fall, but we do know that obviously more than 500,000 Russian soldiers have apparently fallen, according to Ukrainian media and their sources there. But yeah, this obviously, I would like to say that let us hope that obviously with Blinken and Lammy obviously being going together to Ukraine is a good sign about showing that the UK and the US still have a strong relationship, and obviously with Keir Starmer meeting with US President Joe Biden later this week, it's obviously enforcing that relationship as well. So it's positive. It's positivemetry, and it's very positive for our reputation on the world stage, shall we say, given how pathetic the last several prime ministers that we have had. So, but we'll have to wait and see over time how that all goes. But what do you guys honestly think about Antony Blinken and David Lammy, obviously in the meetings, and some of the things that the US Secretary of State has said about the UK, has said about the so-called Brexit reset with EU? What do you guys make so far of this? Do you actually think there's some positives to take out of this, from what the US is saying, how our relationship could be with other nations since a Labour government has come in? Let me know your thoughts and more down in the comment section below. If you found this video interesting, please hit the like button, we greatly appreciate it. Share it across social media so others are notified of this video, and subscribe if you haven't already, because it really does help support the channel. And if you want to go one step further, financially support me and the work that I do here, you can do so by becoming a YouTube member for as little as 99p, or join me on Rumble or Patreon for exclusive content on those platforms. So thank you all so much for watching, and I hope to catch you all very, very soon.